Hey there, and welcome to this month's collection of strange recent cases. If you haven't seen one of these videos before, I basically collect all of the strange, weird cases I come across while doing research for my other videos. A lot of them aren't really long enough to be their own video, so compiling them all into one compilation is a pretty fun way to start the month. So, let's get into it. I want to give a shout out to today's sponsor, Scentbird. Scentbird is a service that I've really come to enjoy. I've been getting their fragrances every month for a while now. Scentbird is a service that sends you scents like this each month. Scentbird is really changing the game when it comes to how people shop for and discover new fragrances. It's great whether you have no knowledge of this stuff like me, or whether you're just wanting to try something new. Scentbird lets you choose a new designer fragrance to try every month for just $17. You can pick what you want each month as well. They have all sorts of perfumes, colognes, and even a lot of unisex options out there. You'll get a month's supply of each one, so you can try out a bunch without committing to a huge bottle that could easily cost around $300 to $500 at the store. Each bottle has a lot of volume to it. It takes me quite a long time to even use it all. This month I got Our Best Smeller by Grooming Lounge, Sexual Steel by Michael Germain, and Maritime by Tommy Bahama. Out of these three, I'd have to say that Our Best Smeller is my favorite. Not only because I appreciate a good pun, but also because it smells like something I would actually like to wear. It's very nice. Why don't you try it out and see which ones you're into? Got no ideas? Well, you can find your scent by taking a simple quiz on Scentbird. It'll give you a good match based on your results, something you can kind of make your own thing. So hop on to Scentbird and use my code DIRETRIP2 to get a solid 55% off your first month. Using my promo code, it's only a little bit over $7, so give it a look. So first off, we have Michigan woman charged with targeting own daughter in catfishing scheme. Mount Pleasant, Michigan. Starting in early 2021, a teenage girl started getting cyberbullied online along with her boyfriend at the time. Little by little, the bullying started to go up in scale. Eventually, in December of 2021, a complaint was filed with the Beale County School District in relation to the incidents. Hundreds and hundreds of cruel messages were being sent to the teenagers, often referring to the two by derogatory names. According to the police reports, the messages often used pretty specific wording that indicated that the messages were coming from someone that the two kids knew. The bulk of the messages contained some form of hate speech or another and urged the two teenagers to take their own lives. A lot of the messages seem to be copy-paste of previously sent messages, sent over and over again to really drive that point home. Whoever was sending the messages was spoofing, meaning that they were hiding their location and making it look as if the messages were coming from all sorts of different places, even going as far as using multiple phone numbers across all sorts of area codes. After not too long, this complaint against the school became a full-on police investigation in January of 2022. This is because the bullying didn't actually take place on school property and didn't use any school devices, so the school's hands were tied. The teen girl's mother, Kendra Gale Licari, 42, was working as a girls' basketball coach for the Beale County schools. Initially, she fully cooperated with the police during the investigation into the bullying. However, it didn't take too long before the police found out who the culprit was. It was this basketball coach, the girl's mother herself. The police were able to compile about 350 full pages of text and social media messages sent to the daughter that implicated Kendra Licari. Soon enough, the police decided to reach out to the FBI to get some extra help. They were able to pretty easily find out it was her when they found out that one single IP address went back to most of the posts that had been sent to her. This IP address led them back to, well, her own mother. When the detectives came out to Kendra's home and confronted her with what they had found, she adamantly denied sending the earlier harassing messages. But after those earlier messages, in her own words, she just fed off from it and began to send them, she got caught up in sending the messages, and it just continued. Which seems to imply that she didn't send the earliest messages, but was inspired by them to send more. Unfortunately, that's just a statement and does nothing to offer any sort of motive behind the crime. The sheriff said that Kendra asked him if he could just keep quiet about this and not really let anybody else know about it. She said that she didn't want her daughter to go back to school and face negative treatment from her peers. I don't think I really need to point out the irony here. The police told her that, well, basically too bad, this was going to be public information. She was arrested and charged with 2 counts of stalking a minor, 2 counts of using a computer to commit a crime, and 1 account of obstruction of justice. Kendra, being hit with a number of felony charges, decided to blame the whole thing on some other unnamed teenagers at the school. She even used VPNs in an attempt to frame them. Shortly after, neither the prosecutor's office or the school superintendent would comment on this incident. Once confronted with the mountain of evidence against her, Kendra finally confessed. She was released on $5,000 bond after an arraignment. She's due back in court within the coming weeks. She still hasn't revealed a motive. This next court date is going to determine whether or not there is enough evidence to proceed with a trial. If she's convicted, she faces a possibility of 10 years in prison. As of the writing of this, no news outlets have been able to reach Kendra for comment. We still have no idea why she did this. Next up, we have woman forcibly removed child's blood, self-diagnosed illness. That's kind of a headline that leaves you with more questions than answers. Out in Cross Lake, Minnesota, a woman named Jordan Borders, who is 32, was just recently arrested and charged with a count of torture after a police investigation showed that she had been forcibly removing blood from her child. The investigation originally started after Jordan took her 9-year-old kid to the hospital. Hospital staff came to notice that somebody had been taking the child's blood and it wasn't them. After not being able to find out where this blood was being taken from, they decided to contact the police. The police came to interview Jordan's 3 kids and asked them what was going on. The children told them that they had seen their mom drawing blood from the 9-year-old and that they were instructed to flush the blood down the toilet and not to tell anybody about it. These other 2 kids, who were 11 and 8 years old, were diagnosed by their mother with Borders with osteogenesis imperfecta, also known as brittle bone disease. The 2 had been forced to wear casts and neck braces most of the time, despite both being perfectly healthy. One of these 2 kids, in fact, had spent over 2 years of his life in one single cast. The crimes and the cruelty don't really stop there either. Jordan had been receiving benefits from the state of Minnesota that were supposed to go towards raising the children as well. Not only that, but she had even been nominated to receive funds from several non-profit organizations, which she ended up receiving about $35,000 in total from, only to have the kids end up in this sort of environment. All of the kids told the police that their mother often mistreated them, saying that she would choke them and throw them around the house. She even forced them to stand outside in the cold for long periods of time and hit them with belts as punishment. One of the kids recalled being choked until his vision went blurry and he lost consciousness. Another admitted to never having had a bed before. "I was never safe," he told the investigators. One of the kids said that he had personally seen his mother stealing all sorts of medical supplies from doctors' offices they had visited in the past. Sure enough, police found special strings and materials used for making casts inside her home. She was charged with 3 counts of child torture and 3 counts of stalking. Not really sure how stalking comes into play. Her husband, a man named Christopher Martin Badowicz, is also facing charges of aiding an offender to avoid arrest after he helped her to do just that back in November. On Thursday, December 1st, she appeared in Crow Wing County District Court. She appeared before the judge via Zoom. The prosecutors urged the judge to wait on a domestic abuse no-contact order as the kids were already out of Jordan's custody and she had agreed to terminate her parental rights on December 2nd. The judge accepted the request. One of the kids was placed into protective custody months ago. The other 2 were removed shortly after. Jordan isn't allowed any unsupervised contact with the kids, and with her charges, she isn't allowed to contact anyone under the age of 18. Next up, we've got former SAPD officer fired for a feces sandwich released from employment in Floresville, mayor says. So here's an odd one involving literal turd sandwiches. This all started way back in 2016 when a police officer decided to mess with a homeless man. He did so in one of the most disgusting ways imaginable. Matthew Luckhurst, a 5-year veteran of the San Antonio Police Department who had been assigned to a downtown bike patrol, bragged to a fellow officer that he had, quote, picked up some feces, placed it in a slice of bread, and put it in a styrofoam container on the ground next to an unnamed homeless man. This other officer that he bragged to urged him to go back and throw the sandwich away, and he assumed Matthew did. However, he didn't, and this other officer went on to report his actions. This resulted in Matthew Luckhurst being fired from the San Antonio Police Department. City officials expressed their outrage at the whole ordeal, saying that he didn't represent their department. The chief called his actions vile and disgusting, but also took pride in the fact that at least one other officer came forward to report him. This case was once again brought back into the public light when it came to be known that Matthew had moved and found employment with another police department in Texas. It didn't take too long for his past to come to light. After he got his new job with the Floresville Police Department in Texas, his superiors soon learned of what he had done back in San Antonio. When checking up on Matthew's past, the FPD came to find that the sandwich incident wasn't even his only poo-related fiasco. They learned that there had also been a separate incident that contributed to his permanent removal from the SAPD as well. Matthew had apparently left an unflushed log in the woman's bathroom at a police station. After a female officer asked the staff to keep the area clean, he took it upon himself to rub what was called brown gunk all over the toilet seat in the women's bathroom. Once the Floresville PD learned about all of this, they had no choice but to issue a response to the matter. They said, "There has been a concern that has been raised by the media and the community regarding an individual that is currently serving as a reserve officer for the Floresville Police Department." Unfortunately, the Floresville Police Department was not fully aware of the entire incident involving the alleged incident, as the same individual had previously been issued a general discharge by the previous law enforcement agency that he was employed with. Please rest assured that the city of Floresville and the FPD does not condone any of the alleged actions and will do whatever is necessary to ensure the continued safety of its citizens. As you'd expect, Matthew Luckhurst was soon fired. It really isn't known what Matthew Luckhurst is up to now, but it's definitely possible that he's seeking employment with yet another law enforcement agency somewhere in the US. With his online reputation, though, it's probably not very likely that he'll get very far. Now we have UK Poo Bomber banned from defecating, urinating in public. I know what you guys really want. You want more poop-related crime stories. Don't even try to deny it. Well, don't worry, because I've got you covered with one more. In this story, a woman was pretty much literally told to cut that shit out. A 50-year-old British woman came to be known as the Poo Bomber after she, well, poo-bombed her neighbor's property. I can only take this to mean that she threw brown bubbles all over this neighbor's yard and maybe even their home. This all came after a long 25-year campaign of harassment that she took out against this neighbor. From 1996 to 2018, Amanda Lee from Crewe in Cheshire had been convicted of a whopping 15 different crimes. These crimes range from everything from harassment to public order offenses. It seems that from decades back, she has been involved in a lot of antisocial behavior, to say the least. She had also been accused of making a number of fake emergency calls to the police, making herself known as somewhat of a nuisance. Lately, the Cheshire Police ended up applying for a criminal behavior order against the woman, which the Crewe Magistrates Court was quick to grant. This is an order that bans Amanda from engaging in all sorts of behaviors, mainly urinating and defecating outside. She also isn't allowed to possess alcohol in an open container in certain zones and isn't allowed to use abusive language. Naturally, she was also barred from making calls to the police without a valid reason. A police spokesman, Alex Baker, said, "A criminal behavior order is sought once all reasonable avenues have been explored regarding persistent offenders." In this case, Lee's attitude and behavior has been ongoing since the 1990s, and she has been convicted numerous times for incidents that impact greatly on residents. She has persistently shown no consideration at all for the actions her offending has had on others. There comes a point when you have to say enough is enough and take additional action to protect the community and business in the area. And now, man wearing ankle monitor robbed bank of $754, scrawling demand note on back of his own birth certificate. Alright, I'm very happy to say that this next case took place very close to where I grew up in Springfield, Missouri, and it's very stupid, which checks out. A man named Michael Connolly Lloyd, age 30, has just recently attempted to rob a Bank of America out in Springfield, and what he said was in order to prove a point to his girlfriend. This all took place in June of 2022. In this robbery, a highly unusual and moronic one, he came into the bank and scribbled his demands for cash onto a note that was, get this, written on the back of his own birth certificate. He wrote, "Give your money now, don't say anything, I have a partner outside." Not only did he do this, he did this while he was already wearing a court-ordered ankle monitor that followed his location at all times. Michael then fled the scene in a black Dodge Ram pickup truck. Naturally, with these two factors combined, it wouldn't take too long for police to identify the guy. Hell, either one of these factors would have probably been more than enough. But interestingly enough, he was caught because his roommate's boyfriend decided to report him to the police and let them know that he was the guy behind the whole thing. The police soon found him in a nearby trailer park. After a short time, he fully confessed to what he had done. He said that he had done this in order to prove a point to his girlfriend. It still isn't known exactly what this point was or what he really means by that. Michael ended up pleading guilty before the U.S. Chief Magistrate Judge, a man named David P. Rush, to 1 count of bank robbery in connection with the incident. The court documents say, Lloyd told investigators that he expected to receive prison time and he would take full responsibility for whatever punishment he was to receive. I guess we'll see what kind of time he ends up with. Here we've got 66-year-old woman accused of stabbing her neighbors over leaf blower fight. Well, here's another wild one. Back in February, a 66-year-old woman named Kyung Moulton came back to her home in Palm Bay, Florida, and found an unsatisfactory amount of leaves on her front lawn. She assumed that they had been placed there deliberately by the people who live across the street. Filled with a hot, fiery inferno of absolute rage, she busted out her leaf blower and decided to blow the leaves back onto their yard. The neighbors, seeing her blowing leaves into their own yard, naturally came outside to ask her what she was even doing. The conversation got a bit heated. When the neighbor's sister came out to try to intervene and calm the situation, Kyung slapped her across the face. This started a fight. Kyung then proceeded to whip out a steak knife that she was carrying and use it to stab the sister. When the man tried to help his sister, she stabbed him in the arm as well. She then walked over to the man's mother and pushed her to the ground, defeating the family and claiming a clutch 3v1 victory. Surveillance footage taken from the home showed the entire confrontation. It clearly showed Kyung pushing the man and his mother and struggling with the sister, although it was hard to make out the stabbing from the footage. When the police came out, they never did find the knife, and Kyung denied ever even having one. Despite this, it was clear that the two had indeed been stabbed by, well, their stab wounds. Kyung Moulton was then arrested. She was charged with 2 counts of aggravated battery and 1 count of battery on a person aged 65 or older. Her charges could result in up to 15 years of prison, 15 years of probation, and even a $10,000 fine. And finally, we have KFC customer shoots employee after restaurant runs out of corn, police say. This case is oddly reminiscent of one of these that I covered in one of these Strange Cases videos just a couple months back. In that video, a Subway worker was shot and killed over putting too much mayonnaise on a sandwich. Well, this one doesn't involve mayo, but it does involve corn. Just last month, on December 12th, a KFC customer in St. Louis ended up reacting with outrage when an employee told him that they had run out of one of their most popular side dishes, corn. While placing an order in the drive-thru at around 6 p.m. at the KFC on Del Mar Boulevard, this customer went into a violent, screaming fit upon being told that he wouldn't be getting any corn. Basically, nothing was known about the suspect. His identity still remains unknown. All anyone could really say about the man was a vague description. He was a black man with a thin build who was probably in his 40s or 50s. If you think that description isn't really good enough, well, neither did anybody else.
SLMPD is still looking for the KFC shooter, but the description given by police is not very good.
Once the man started barking violent threats over the drive-thru speaker, he decided to pull up to the window and pull a handgun on the employees. A 25-year-old employee went outside to deal with him, only to come back a few minutes later, saying that he had been shot. The suspect quickly drove off and fled the scene. The employee was rushed to the hospital with a gunshot wound to the abdomen. Originally, he was in critical condition, but after a while his vitals were stable. Police were originally unable to interview the employee due to his injuries, so they started trying to identify the suspect through other means. They were able to get a bit more of a description of the guy, in which they found that he had a shaggy beard, a white or gray brimmed hat, and a blue denim jacket with gray sleeves. As of now, he's still on the loose. The victim, though, survived the attack and is currently in stable condition. Once again, thank you for watching my video. January is always kind of a slow month for YouTube, so making videos like this helps keep my spirits up a little bit. If you found the video interesting, please give it a like, it helps out in the algorithm, and if you like content like this, go ahead and subscribe. I've been making it a monthly thing. If you don't mind, go ahead and follow me on social media. I mean, YouTube can be pretty finicky with channels like this. If anything would ever happen to me, that would probably be the only way you'd ever hear about it. If you want to support the channel even further, I do have a Patreon account, which I always keep linked down in the description below. And speaking of which, shout out to the top patrons. We've got, first, this monstrosity of a username. Then we have Stephen Jamie Kramer, Max Sword Guy, L, Rain Noir, El Palmieri, Pao Yang, Alice Malice Tentacles, April Diamond, Starfade, Astral, Grack, Angie, Rick of Work in Progress USA, Sash Johnson, Marianne McCurdy, Buttery Frankus, Wafrans, Jules Latona, Arctic Cat, Alan Damiani, Marsh, Rinsenstein, Kim Peak, Lux Alpaca, Charity, Scoochie Main, Jackie, and Mark Barnett. You are all probably kind enough to give a sandwich to a homeless man that does not have poop in it. Once again, shout out to Scentbird for partnering with me on this video. Check out the links in the description below. This has been your host Kyle. Thank you, and good night.